Hi, Si. Welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Good to speak again.
Good to speak again. And I know we did this about a year or so ago, the other way around. It'd be good for the listeners just to give a bit of an overview of yourself, what your current role is, and how you got to where you are today in terms of your role as CMO.
I'm CMO for Bull Signet Group, but two businesses, Bull Products and Signet, working in the fire safety space, particularly for construction and commercial buildings, projects. The background, really, I actually started as a designer, starting in obviously junior artwork and design, and kind of working my way up through that career, up to creative director level. At that point, I think you naturally um, get more and more involved on the marketing side. Have much more influence in that as well. So kind of then fully moving into marketing when I was working at long spell at a fire safety company, and then moving into marketing and really kind of gone from there. Kind of really focusing on wherever I've been. The company that I've worked in has been a growth journey, and so having that experience, that's kind of what I've adopted as my thing. Really, is really driving growth, using marketing to drive growth, being close to sales, but having a heavy involvement in the creative side as well, just by nature of my background. So yeah, like I say, currently CMO for the group, and again, really using marketing to be that growth engine, to be a demand driver for the two businesses.
So, and where did that come from in terms of the focus on growth? Because not all marketers think like that, do they? Is that from the early days of working with startups and the early stage businesses, or you've always
Yeah,
focused on the revenue side of things?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my first ever job was like a graphics technician, I think the job title was, and again, small business in Wolverhampton, kind of fighting against much bigger players, and having to find ways to scale the kind of business. Obviously, my involvement directly in that age and stage was small, but I was exposed to, a small group of really tenacious people who are trying to, chomp at bigger competitors' heels, and try and win and grow a business, and, scrappy where you need to be, and reactive where you need to be. And then it was interesting. I went to Yale, worked for Yale, the lot company, and obviously going from small to big business, had that exposure. And it was only after a couple of years that I went back to a small business again. So I think straight away it was interesting to me that I kind of preferred that smaller business, that more. I think I probably valued the level of involvement. You're suddenly kind of quite junior, young, going to a big business, and obviously you haven't got that much impact in the grand scheme of things. Going back to the small business then was okay. I remember I was the only graphic designer. That was it. So suddenly it wasn't a team anymore. It was just me. And it was in that business that I then, like I say, we grew from like 13 people to 200 people over the course of 11 years. And within that, that's where I grew. So a lot of my kind of formative years were through that role. And again, that you can see, you're experiencing how a business grows. You're experiencing how, we've won new business and how we have to scale up all areas of the business, to meet demand and things like that, win bigger contracts. And again, the exposure to how marketing affects that, at scale, where you have to kind of find a way of, you can make as many calls as you possibly can, but there's going to be a limit to that, and then you put more people in and they can only make as many calls as they can, or do as many appointments as they can, So how do you then find a way of saying, okay, well, I need to do what I'm doing here and get this message across that I'm getting across on the phone or in person, but I need to do that at scale. How do I do that at scale? And I think that's what marketing is, for me.
So
It's like I have this product and service, and I need to get it. I need to make people aware of it as much as possible. So it's the macro, on a macro level.
So even if, so you say you're a startup, you've got a really good product, some good salespeople, good founder, that there's a limit to how far that can go without really good marketing. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah. And I think there's again, the conversation you're having, you can have a really great conversation one-to-one with someone on the phone, which is massively important, massively valuable. That's how you win business one-to-one. And that's a really good message. You've said all those great messages to that person, but you've only said it to that person. Conversation.
So it's a much different role being a CMO at a smaller business than it would be at a larger business. I'm assuming it's a different ball game in terms of your responsibilities and what your day to day looks like. Or is it similar?
Yeah, I think the thing is, depending on the size of the business, it defines on whether you have a CMO or not, that have come from financial backgrounds, that have come from entrepreneurial backgrounds, that have come from marketing backgrounds. And I think depending on the CEO's appetite, or even the MD's appetite to get involved in marketing and their experience in it, I think that probably defines whether you have a CMO or not.
So what sort of size company or revenue would you recommend that you would get a CMO to take you on that next level then?
I think it's probably at the level where, again, you're probably reaching a limit in terms of the sales team and their capabilities to happen. Is the activity that we're doing enough to get that kind of visibility and that demand balanced with the outbound activity and the meetings and the calls and the activity from the sales team? Is that enough, or are we on a growth trajectory, and do we need to scale up? And I think the role of a CMO is to come in and say and define how you scale up, how that happens. When you make a conscious decision to say, okay, we're going to start really driving demand, driving brand awareness, but that's going to take investment, and that means that we need to measure it. We need to understand what the ROI is and what the results are going to be. And I think the role of the CMOs is they have the experience to be able to bring in, to come and implement that in the business, to say, okay, well, this is how you go to the next level. This is how you scale up. This is the level of investment. But actually, these are the results you're going to, this is how we're going to do it right. And this is how we're going to measure it.
There's obviously so many things you could look at as part of the business. I mean, we're, small business growing. There's so many elements, the podcast, the content, events. There's so many, the website, as you mentioned, there's so many things you could look at. How do you go about that process of identifying what's most important to focus on? Because obviously as a smaller business, it's very hard to do it, or a larger business, it's very hard to do all of it, right? So how would you go about defining what to focus on first?
Ultimately, you've got to meet the customer where they're at. You've got to understand what is your customers, what's their journey that they're going on when they're looking to, when they're a pain or a challenge. You've got to understand the customer. And I think that, again, that's another big part of a CMO's role, is to really, really understand the customer, get close to them, deep dive into what their needs are, what their fears are, what their challenges are. And I think it's from that you can then say, okay, so these are the things that they're generally looking at. This is where they're hanging out. This is the content they consume, and kind of prioritizing that, really. And for instance, where we just launched a major campaign for Bollé Products. It's very, very industry engagement focused. It's very thought leadership. And the reason for that is, in speaking to our customers and our customers' marketing teams as well, that's their approach. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. So their view is, well, we're not over it. So these are big major construction firms and house builders. And our kind of positioning is that we don't overly promote ourselves. We lead the industry. We lead by example. We share stories with insights. And so straight away it's like, okay, well, if that's the habit in the industry, then we need to fall in line with that. So what are the activities? What are the content? What's the content that people are looking at? One of the things we uncovered was, people just don't have the amount of time, enough time to sit and read white papers or big, deep, long studies. They want to learn. They want to grow. CPDs, for instance, are a massive part of the industry, but it needs to be easy to consume. So again, that then defines, okay, well, there's no point us going out and do these massive deep reports. Actually, what we need to do is identify key issues, identify key topics, talk about it, but keep it light, and kind of take that approach instead. So it's really about kind of understanding, like, okay, what's the customer's journey? But I think also you've got, we're B2B, and just like many B2B companies, it's not just one person either. It's not just one job role. There's so many different people involved. And so again, it's kind of all, what do they do? What's the sustainability manager's focus? What's the health and safety manager's focus? What's going on site with site teams who are on the building site, and what are people at the head office doing? Right. And now they're all operating at different levels and consuming different content.
So sometimes you're saying it's not, if you're going into a new companies, you don't necessarily have to be different, stand out and do something, trying to find out what works in that industry and then repeat that or do it better than your competitors. But there's going to be certain playbooks or things you should do in an industry or a different vertical or a different sector that work, that there's no point reinventing the wheel. Focus on that. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah, I think it's tried and tested tactic. I think when you get to there's your positioning, there's your strategy, and then your tactics, and I think for me, when it comes to the tactic, it's like well, yeah, we know that there's existing channels for content to be deployed on or ads to be run on. We know that there's events and trade shows. We know that there's there's press and they're going to run a certain level of articles and ads and things you can do. I think where you stand out, and where I always say it's about being distinctive, and where you can be distinctive is in the positioning, even the brand message. To say, okay, again, understand the customer. What do they want? What do we offer? What makes us different as a business? And really communicate that at a brand level. So that then when you're doing content and people are reading something informative, it's actually you as a brand that stands out. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I think also people can get very distracted. For example, obviously with Truly's, we focus on LinkedIn and most of our businesses come from that channel, but there's part of me that thinks, it'd be good to do this on TikTok and Instagram, which is good. It might be good for the ego, but it might not necessarily be the way to focus on driving the business. Yeah. To have 1,000 TikTok followers might be, completely irrelevant to having another 1,000 on LinkedIn, for example. So I think there's so many channels of things you can do. It's about focusing on the ones that work and just getting really good at that.
Again, meeting your customer where they're at. Yes, your customer will be a huge amount of the customers that we might be speaking to on LinkedIn that will also have TikTok. But do they actually want to be consuming your kind of content? If I work in the construction industry and I'm on LinkedIn and I'm following all the builders and I'm following all the locations and brands and everything, am I going to follow those on TikTok as well? No, probably not. Maybe you have to dive deep, but generally people are on TikTok because they want to watch lighter things. They want to see celebrities or comedians or influencers or, those kind of things as well. Yeah, we've been through that process. And I think you start to say, okay, well, things like YouTube, for instance, well, people use YouTube for educational, for work purposes. So actually maybe it's worth looking at that, but they also use it for personal purposes. So it's all to be evaluated, but yeah, absolutely. It's like with LinkedIn specifically, you'll know that it is the place for business, and yes, okay, sometimes the feed can be frustrating, but ultimately that's where the people you want to talk to reside. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting when LinkedIn did their campaign where it had, people on the exercise bike at the gym, and it's saying this is where your customers are, and someone kind of holding his kid, brushing his teeth and had his phone as well. It's kind of showing that, look, people are on LinkedIn, your customers are on LinkedIn, but not just kind of 9 to 5. So again, that reinforces the fact that it isn't like they finish work at 5 o'clock and go, right, okay, I'm not going on LinkedIn anymore. Now I'm going to go on TikTok only. Yeah. No, they're still coming back on LinkedIn because that's where they expect to see
Yeah.
news about the industry, advice, guidance, those kind of things.
And behind the flashy sort of LinkedIn profile and bio, and there's a person behind that. The person that does things at the weekends, got a family, they're people that you can interact with, and they might have the flashy title, but they're still people at the end of the day that you can talk to and speak to, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's you're seeing kind of analytics that there is a dip in activity at the weekend, but it's not non-existent. Because they're very, again, depending on where you are in your career, whether you're at the stage or mindset or whatever, where you completely switch off at the weekend. But we know that not all of us do.
yeah,
I have a habit of just pulling my phone up and just pressing on the LinkedIn icon and having a look. I can't help it.
yeah, addicted to it. Yeah. So how's this? Obviously, you've been doing this a number of years now, and not, the market's moving at such a pace. How's this? I'm assuming the sort of main philosophy of marketing is similar, but how has it changed over the last sort of 15, 10, 5 years in terms of the CMO role? How things changed?
I think in general marketing, I think that I think thought leadership, and industry engagement is bigger than ever. I just feel I've seen where, the more kind of supportive activities and information that you can put out, where that has been done, I've just seen that natural kind of response from the industry. And it's really difficult because it's this where you've had obviously a massive increase in performance marketing and advertising and being able to measure that. And, so many tools about so you can attribute, ROI of new business to marketing. On the flip side, like I say, that intangible, just good content advice is is more important than ever as well. So it's I think the challenge, for a CMO is to say yes, we can make marketing a revenue driving and a function and a growth engine, and we can provide a level of return on investment, but also to kind of say, look, but also there's a bit of magic here. There's the intangible that you do, that you just know that it's the right thing to do. And there's that intangible feedback. And it's interesting how the rest of the leadership team take it, because you can come back and you can say, the contribution for marketing is X amount. And it's impressive and it's good news and everyone's happy. But then you'll say something like, one of our sales team said, I've been to a couple of customers this week and they just think the stuff we're doing on LinkedIn is fantastic. They think the content's amazing. Please don't stop, keep it up. And people almost get more excited about that,
Yeah.
So it's not all about numbers. There are some things we just can't put a number on. And so it's finding the right balance of, assuring the team, assuring the leadership and the shareholders and the board that, we're going to make this a performing function, and we're going to be targeted, that, that it can be measured, but it's not just about a revenue number or, X amount of ROI.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, my background was sales, and it's very easy to track that, right? It's all about revenue. If you don't hit your revenue targets, you're gone. It's as simple as that in sales. It's really sort of definite, isn't it? Whereas market, you can track MQLs, you could track event registrations, etc. But there's so many things that you can't measure to that degree, I guess.
Yeah, and again, the technology is better than ever. The importance of marketing and sales being aligned is massive. Because again, there needs to be that understanding from each other of the two functions, and then how they work together and how they cross over. Because there's there's a lead generation on the marketing side, and there's a qualification that's required, but that is also kind of in hand with sales, and understanding then, okay, so what to do with this lead and what's the next stage. And then of course the tools to help get business over the line. Again, marketing has a big involvement in that. And then equally the message that marketing put out to the market in some of the, wider collateral or activity they do needs massive input sales because they're the ones that are speaking to customers on a daily basis, you know. So getting really, really hand in hand on it.
Yeah.
And then I think to that point, like I say, that feedback from sales on the LinkedIn activity, it's getting the whole team behind that and understanding of yeah, there's a tangible and there's an intangible, and ultimately, you know, we can look at numbers, but we also need to look at that intangible data and go, is this just good stuff? Are we doing the right thing? Are we amplifying our brand? Are we position ourselves more at a more premium level?
Yeah. I think that's it, especially with LinkedIn, is sort of, you know, in theory, if you had your whole team sharing content, sending out messages, doing their personal brand, you know, in theory, that's fantastic. But it's tracking that and proving that's working is the real challenge, isn't it? And tying that back to the revenue, which is the hard bit. But yeah, I was literally speaking to a client the other day, like really big organization where they were generating the leads in the marketing team. And then I said, oh, well, you know, what happens after that? And they said they don't know. They literally send them to the sales team and it goes off on its own journey. And there's no link. And this is a massive global organization. I was like blown away that they didn't know what happened to it. So how do you fix that problem? Because I guess it's been around for years, isn't that link between sales and marketing? But if you can link the two together and you're both incentivized on the same goal, you can actually start tracking the marketing campaigns to revenue, and you've hit the jackpot then, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, I've been personally stung by it. You know, I've done campaigns and events that have driven, you know, an absolute kind of gold lead list, really, really exciting companies to then, you know, for the sales team to reach out to, and like nothing has happened with it. And I think the kind of learning for me was, well, actually, if you come into a business and you know, you're going to start driving this activity at scale, have you got the team, the sales team that can deal with that?
Yeah.
You know, if the sales team are completely tied up just looking after current accounts and, you know, just they can only deal with you know, a couple of leads here and there, you know, there's no point going ahead. It's like same on a production side or something, isn't it? You know, you drive a load of demand for a product where you've got to be able to produce and deliver that product. You know, otherwise you're going to be, you know, you're going to, there's no point to it. You've just wasted your time and money. And I think that the problem there, where they literally got stung on, nothing happened with these leads, was I was the one that was challenged. It's like, well, you know, you made this huge lead list. What's happened with it? You know, and it's kind of, and so I think from that, I was very kind of conscious going after that point of saying, okay, I need to absolutely make sure that the sales team are fully on board, fully backing, fully prepared and aware, and happy to kind of pick this up and own it, you know, and there's been a lot of focus from me to say, look, I need assurance that I'm going to drive this activity. I need assurance that it's going to be picked up, dealt with, you know. So have we got the right, are the right tools in place, or have we got the visibility? Are you going to seeing what I'm driving? But then what's the next steps? What's then what's going to happen? That's more than just kind of you know, ping an email or something like that. No, actually, what's the plan if this, you know, if we're driving quality, what's the plan for picking it up? And I think it's like I was saying about, you know, you reach that time when in a business where being very sales focused, hard graft, cold calls, cold conversations, and then suddenly, you know, actually there's going to be this new marketing approach where there's going to be warmer conversations. There's going to be warm for a lot of sales teams who aren't used to that. It's hard for them to get their head around. It's like
100%.
all I know is calling people and I can't, that's never happened before. We haven't had people at scale kind of contacting us, you know, already aware of everything. I'm used to having to kind of talk about the business and what we do and frame everything, and before I even start talking about the good stuff. But now actually people are calling me and I don't have to say all that stuff. It's really hard at first to get the heads around.
Yeah, they're already before you started. They're skeptical that it's the
Yeah.
right, the good leads are the right people. Like before you've even started the campaign.
Yeah. And I've had so many times people said, yeah, I need to see it to understand it. I don't quite, you know, and so again, I think it's making sure that, that they're fully on board and clear and understanding of how it's going to work. I think there's always a level of skepticism at first. It
Yeah.
is like, well, that's not how it's worked before, so why would that change now? And
Yeah.
especially then it becomes doubly difficult because of course there's always a lag. There's always, okay, we're going to go out with a campaign or something. It's not suddenly you're going to get, 100 leads the next day.
Yeah.
It's going to ramp over time. So again, like as time goes on, it's like, well,
Yeah. I
what's
also
going to
think
happen here?
it's around the sort of type of lead that it is. I use this example all the time, but one of the biggest deals I ever closed came off a marketing campaign I ran with marketing, and it was a white paper download. And I called the person up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I have downloaded this. There's a project next year. You're one of the only people who call me off the back of this. Come and meet me." And we were right at the start of the whole project, and it turned into a multi-million-pound managed security services deal off the back of a white paper download, which most salespeople would have ignored. They wouldn't have even picked up the phone to them. So I think that's a bit, most sales guys are waiting for that perfect opportunity that's qualified, ready. But actually, all the steps before that are really valuable. And if you're not following up, then your competitors will, and you get there before you. So I
Yeah.
think that education of it might be an early funnel lead, but it could be an absolute, gold mine if you get to it quickly.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of those, I mean, that's like a golden case, isn't it? Where literally someone's engaged with a piece of marketing and straight away there was like a very, very clear opportunity. Again, there's a lot that's just kind of that general, that general awareness. I used the analogy the other day. It's, you buy the way that a lot of companies collect data is, how did you find us today or something like that. So, you might buy a product, buy a coffee machine, and you buy it from the manufacturer's website, and there's a question that says, "How'd you find us today?" And well, you Googled it. You Googled that coffee machine because you wanted to go to the site to buy it, and so you
Uh-huh.
say, "Oh, I Googled it." Well, actually, that was just the last part in the process. The reason that you knew about that coffee machine was the ad that you saw a month ago, and then the reviews that you read online, and the recommendations that you had, and the conversations,
Yeah.
the previous browsing of the site that you've maybe been on a few times, and the listing on Amazon. There's all these different parts, and then the final kind of point that you go, well, it's Google, and so again for the marketing team, they're like, oh well, that came from Google.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
that's just a tiny bit of the information, and so again, the measurement is difficult as well.
Mm.
I think ultimately it's about getting, again, the role of a CMO is kind of getting the team, sales and the rest of the marketing team, but the wider team as well, kind of behind, what proper marketing
Mm.
is. And obviously we're talking a lot about campaigns and demand and activity and things like that, but obviously there's so much more, the strategy for the business, the CMO has a big role in that because the CMO is customer focused and, market intelligence focused and things like that.
So, do you think the CMO should be sort of tied into the revenues of the business, like the VP of sales or the CRO, like linked in, overall in terms of the revenue, very closely like a sales role, or should it be a separate function?
One of the things that I've uh, been doing is kind of what's a benchmark of like expected contribution to the revenue. So if you can look at the data and say, okay, well, we've had this much revenue come in so far this year. We're looking into the data and we can see that okay, there's a certain amount of that people have had exposure to marketing. They've got emails or they've been on a visit us on the stand or whatever. Let's look at those. Okay, well, again, there's never going to be an exact science, but to go, well, look, it's safe to say that 25% of the revenue of those orders is fair to say that we can allocate that to marketing because actually, it was part of the journey. There's been calls, there's been conversations, there's been quotes, there's been, all the usual process, but there was the activity that was sent to them. There was the newsletter, there was the, I say the visit to the stand, the campaign
Yeah.
we ran, and that all builds to it. Again, realistically, you could say, well, would they have ordered if they hadn't have seen, the ads that you ran and whatever, would they have ordered
Yeah.
anyway? And you could say, yeah, maybe, but equally, they might not have even heard about us had you
Yeah.
not run those ads. So, so I think there's a case of saying, well, look, you're doing this activity. We know that it's reaching these people. We can see that the orders are coming in. just take a slice of that revenue number and say, well, look, that's the marketing influence.
Yeah.
And I think you can, from that, then you can say, okay, well, let's scale that to the other customers that didn't seem to be exposed to any marketing like that, because actually that might drive more orders, repeat orders from them, or,
Yeah.
you know.
I'd say also is obviously we're speaking about, the lead generation, early funnel, getting the leads, getting those conversations and driving revenue, but also the conversion of the leads is very much driven to marketing as well, because when somebody goes to make a decision, they want to see social proof that it actually works. They want to see case studies. They want to see referenceable clients. They want to see things on your website, that you need that to back it up. And I think that's, I've found that in my experiences, as we're growing the business, is all well and good getting the leads and the deals, but converting them, you need that proof. And that's where marketing can help build that strength in the brand and the service in itself.
Yeah, again, it's a customer touch point, isn't it? And again, marketing should have visibility and involvement in any customer touch point. And yeah, I had a previous MD his biggest value in marketing was the pitch decks and the proposal documents.
Yeah.
Because every time we had a major opportunity, we would look at it and say, right, okay, let's this was kind of working with major retailers. And we'd say that, so some of these opportunities would be huge. So we'd say, right, we really need to just, like, we can't just send across a quote or show them our standard deck. Let's look at the business. Let's look at exactly what they require, what they've asked for. Let's go to the extra lengths to kind of visualize up their solution and put that in, maybe include some of their branding in our own deck to make sure that we're, kind of speaking to them. Again, that's super intangible stuff. But for the MD, he would just say, this is value. Like, this is what I see as real value, because you've kind of made this deck as good as it could possibly be. We had a really positive meeting. Again, would we have had a positive meeting anyway? Maybe, but there's just that extra level that we put in. And again, that's where you just got a gut feel about it. I mean, there's no way you can say to the customer after, I was going to just pick your brain to that. Do you think that meeting would have been worse if we hadn't have done this with the deck, or do you think you wouldn't have ordered if we hadn't put a bit of your branding in our proposal? They're not going to be able to answer that because it's all for.
And again, I think it's even more valuable today because a lot of people, I was going to obviously ask you around AI and things, but obviously you can build proposals in seconds with AI off the back of the transcripted call and get it out within 5 minutes. But actually sitting down and really thinking about it and putting together something bespoke is more valuable today, isn't it? So,
yeah.
And I think one of my old bosses used to say that, every little detail of the proposal, even the spelling, the formatting, that could be the difference between getting the deal and not, because your competitors, you're going to be against other competitors. It's just standing out that little bit more, isn't it? With the detail. So, with that then, in terms of, around AI and things, obviously the role of the CMO is changing, I'd assume, in terms of AI playing a massive part in creating content, the strategy, all those sort of things. It may be similar to what we're experiencing on the sales side of things. There's going to be elements that you can automate and do a lot better with AI. How are you finding that at the moment in terms of the rise of AI within the marketing function?
Well, I think you nailed it there where you said automation. I think where there's automation and there's menial tasks that need doing, where we couldn't previously, I think that's the massive unlock. It's interesting, especially in marketing. People talk about AI and everyone went directly to content creation, which is arguably the worst part. We've seen that, ask AI to write a story or a bedtime story for your child or a clever rhyme or something like that, and a song or something like that, and then it's tragic, it's awful stuff. So if you're going to say, okay, write me an article about something that's quite complex or something that's a burning issue at the moment, it's going to be mediocre. It's the way that AI works is being, it takes all the information it knows and then kind of generalizes it into an answer. So again, the answer is going to be general stuff. So if you want distinction, it's not going to give you that. I think when you look at parsing data and reorganizing data or deep diving, analyzing data, rationalizing information, pulling out key bits, summarizing existing documents, those kind of things. For me, that's been an absolutely massive unlock, and I think on the creative side, I think if you can absolutely say, okay, give me ideas for something, or, make me a picture of particular, say in our case, a building site with one of our alarms on. It's going to give you the best way to look at it is, okay, this is a concept. The way I talk about AI is it's like it's like having a human assistant. So, if I was to say, right, we need to write an article, I might say, look, here's the information, write me an article. And if I was saying that to, a very junior member of staff, I would expect it to be, okay, to be a good start.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to then look at it. We have to work on it together, and I'm going to have to add a bit of polish and level it up and get it to a point where okay, this is good. It's good information now. What it's done is it's pulled key data and things like that I would have to spend time going on the internet trying to find out or speak to people. Actually, it's pulled the information and it's put it together. The actual article's a bit mediocre, but we can work on that. That's okay. And I think that's the best. That's certainly the way that I've seen AI being used to its best.
Yeah, I think also if you get it wrong, it's the same with automation. Is if you get it wrong, it can do more damage than good. So if suddenly everybody's trying to do marketing campaigns and change your logo and the branding and the and everyone's doing that scale, it's very quickly going to dilute your message and your brand. So it's trying to keep that control, I'd manage the challenge for a CMO, right?
Yeah, and like with anything, again, if it was a junior member of staff, you wouldn't say, okay, make a new brochure. Here's the brand assets. Make a new brochure and put it straight on the website. Send it straight out to our database of 18,000 customers or whatever, and we're not going to look at it. And I think there definitely has been instances, I think, where people have just done that with ChatGPT. They've gone, right, here's my logo, here's my information, make me a PowerPoint deck.
Yeah.
And then go, right, spat it out. There you go, send off to the customer. You wouldn't do that with a junior member of staff who's fresh into the business. You'd say get started on it, and then we'll look at it and we'll polish it up, and we'll use. But actually, you've not used the logo in the right way, and you've changed the color of something, and you've stretched this, and that's actually not quite right. You've interpreted that wrong, and you go through that process, don't you? But the point is, it's a start, And
then also, I'm assuming if you've in terms of AI, in terms of resourcing and staffing and things, if you get one good marketer that really knows how to utilize these tools in the right way, it's going to be like having 5 to 10 people in the team, right? If they're utilizing it correctly.
Yeah, I think again, I think it adds more scope for marketers to be more creative and again more distinctive. If you can get to a point rationalizing information, rationalizing data, pulling out key stats from a report or something like that, or some research that you've done, and then that's all done automatically, and then you've just got that core key information that you can build a good bit of content around. But you're right. I think in every business there's probably someone who's a bit of an AI ambassador at the moment, who's using it at a deeper level than everyone else. I think businesses need to kind of identify who they are and kind of lean into that.
Yeah. And I think what you said right at the start in terms of knowing your customer, I think that's the perfect use case for it, in my view. Like every meeting you go into, there's no excuse now not to be prepared around who you're talking to, what the challenges are, what the business like that. You can build that in seconds, right? So whereas 5-10 years ago, you had to really do your research and spend a lot of time doing that. So it's being armed with and that's on the sales side of things as well, being armed with the right information before you do that pitch or that presentation or that proposal. You've got that information at your fingertips now.
Yeah. But again, it's down to humans to interpret it in the right way and communicating it in the right way,
Yeah. Cool. Nearly wrapping up, but where do you think this is going in the next 5 years then in terms of the role of a CMO? You've seen it change over the last 20 years. I've seen the sales side of things shift dramatically, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. What do you think are going to be the biggest changes and challenges over the next 5 years?
I think one of the interesting things is kind of the job title. Even when I joined this business, there was a debate about what my job title should be. Is it growth? Is it customer, chief customer officer? Is it chief growth officer? Is it, yeah, because I think, again, there's like I said, we've talked a lot about, again, that demand gen and revenue, but there's so much involvement from a CMO in terms of identifying opportunities for new products, where the business should go going forward, how competitors are changing, and how does that affect our positioning and what the customers are doing. Again, you can imagine working with construction, the way the housing market has changed, and some of the challenges there, nuclear sites and data centers being built, things like HS2, there's all sorts of things going on in the market as well. And a lot of the time it's put on the CMO to keep an eye on that and report that back. So by default, the CMO has a lot of involvement in the future, like the actual strategy of the business, like not just a marketing strategy, but an actual business strategy. And I think that's probably where, and again, a lot of marketing directors are becoming sales and marketing directors exactly for the reason that they need to be joined at the hip. They need to be close together. So I think a lot of companies are going, well, may as well just make it one department and have one person.
Revenue, the growth needs to be tied together and on the same page, right?
Because it is literally a full customer journey. So I think there's a kind of, there's a lack of clarity about exactly what a CMO does. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think for any CMOs, whether you're currently in the position now or whether you're moving into that position, I think you've got to look at you've got to understand exactly what the remit is and what do you want me to be involved in here. How much do you want me to lead on, say, some of these things you wouldn't traditionally think as a CMO, but identifying a new market segment to go into. I really want to identify the segment, but then a lot of time it's like, okay, create a plan for us to go into that segment now. Wow, okay. Because they go, well, you're closest to it. You've done the research, you understand the customer, you understand the market, right? What are those products?
Yeah.
Who are those customers? How are we going to scale the team up to deal with that? And so I think there's a lot of this. You could come in and go,
Overall,
is that marketing? That kind of isn't. It kind of isn't.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's always been the challenge, but even more so today, isn't it? There's so much that's involved with it, and it's changing every week. So, really interesting. I've learned a lot from this. And but one last question, I guess, on the growth aspect, right? So if you were coming into a business of any size or similar to you've been before, and they were just going out that area where they're selling, but they need to get a CMO and start scaling and that sort of things. In the first 90 days, what are the first things you would look at? I know it's going to be different per vertical, but what would be the first things you would you'd look to implement?
I actually had a 90-day plan coming into my latest role, and actually, side note, it's really important for the CMO to communicate that from the start, because it would be very easy to come in and start making decisions and changing things and everything. But I kind of had a 30-day, it was split into 3 sections. It's 30 days just pure learning, just the other department heads, the wider business, the product set, the customers, the suppliers, the market, just learn absolutely everything, and then the kind of second phase was really, okay, the refining and kind of quick fixes. What's the right tech stack? How are we going to measure things? Understanding what the KPIs are, evaluating the team. How can we get the best out of the existing team? Where do we need to add resource, whether that's agency partners or staff, and kind of start to build the function and the measurement platforms and, like I say, all the technology. And then the kind of third phase was the build. So it's like, okay, what's the, we by this time we should have a bit of an idea on what the strategy is, and I should fully understand what the business needs. So what's the, what's the plan? What's the campaigns? What are the tools that we need to build? What are the key events? And kind of then build, okay, what's that? And that's on 2 levels. It's okay, what's the next kind of year look like in terms of actual activity? Actually long term, what's the goal, the growth goal? And that needs to, again, whatever that marketing strategy is, needs to align with the business strategy as well. So at each stage, in 5 years' time, if we want to be, selling into the US, how are we going to get there? Like, what's the strategy to do that? And by the end of that 90 days was to kind of come back and say, right, so this is everything. We're ready, we've started the building process. We've got the right people. We've got the right processes. We've got the right tools. We're super, super clued up. We're ready to go with the activity.
Yeah.
I think within that time, you got to sleep back and do a few quick wins as well. There's little promos, campaigns, tools you can put in place that show signs of positive. Oh wow, look at this! Look at what we've done here. They've suddenly polished up its our pitch deck. Oh, that looks a lot better now. There's those kind of things you can put in place. But again, it's macro. Like the visible. If you're in, if a business needs a CMO, then in theory they want to do things at scale. They want to build long term. But they want to grow long term, and so the mindset needs to be right. Like, how do I set us up for future growth? What's the what's the activity? What's the team? What's the resource?
What would be a few quick wins you look to implement then in 90 days?
We actually in a recent one there was already a brand refresh underway with Signet. So we that kind of a decision had already been made, but it was good. So I was able to just pick that up, but it was something that I would look at anyway. But we did the same with Duck as well. I think one of the first things I did was look at the positioning. So once you've done the learning, is your message aligned with the customer? And I think actually you can enact that change quite quickly. Because you can sort of say, well, actually, there's no point, and actually you need to, because there's no point going ahead and doing big, broad campaigns and massive activities and this whole new world if your core messaging isn't right. So I think there's definitely an opportunity to refine and tweak language-wise, visually. There's always quick wins there. Yeah. But I think also there's usually an opportunity or two where you can say, look, there's can we run a quick promo? And use that as a test of the market. Say, okay, well, let's run a little promo and let's see what happens. Yeah. Do promos work with our customers? Yeah. What's the uplift in orders, or does anything happen? But I think a lot of it is kind of that positivity of building for the future, and in the view of getting sales on board as well. What are the quick tools that we can put together? Can we give sales a quick creep sheet on, say, the customer personas that we've been looking at? We've been learning first 30 days, learnt the customers, learnt who the key stakeholders were, built kind of customer personas. Yeah. Can we do a tool where we can kind of give the sales code, like, do you actually have these personas written out? So when you're talking to someone, you know exactly who you're speaking to, and exactly what their pains are, what they're looking for, and how you solve it. Little things like that don't take a lot of work, and it's kind of, I think it's externalizing the learnings and the processes that you're putting in place wherever possible.
I think that's key, isn't it? It's taking what you already have, the good stuff, and replicating it. That seems to me the main message here in terms of marketing is you might have all this great stuff you're doing and case studies, but you need to get that repeatable and scalable and out to the market so you can scale the business. Otherwise, you're going to be limited. That's sort of the main learning from my session.
Just like with the sales calls, there's great conversations going on and great information being shared on every single phone call. And again, you go, oh, it's such a shame that it only went to that one person. Let's get that external. And, you go into a business and there'll have been a million one-pagers made and presentation decks and, visualizations of a customer service process and all this kind of stuff that will have been done to show to a customer. And again, it's like to put that out everywhere. Let's show that to everyone. That's a great piece of content that, again, was reactive to just a customer request, but let's make that proactive. Yeah. Let's just take that, dress it up a bit, make sure it's nice and clear, and there you go. I've got a very easy piece of content that I can deploy. Yeah. While we build some of the bigger kind of impactful activities.
No, it's fascinating, Simon. I think we could talk all day, and there's loads of other questions I got for you, but we better wrap it up. But thank you for your time today, and really interesting. I've learned a lot actually. And if anyone needs to find you, I'm assuming on LinkedIn, or if they wanted to reach out with any questions.
Yeah. So Simon McMahon on LinkedIn. And I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, good conversation.
Thanks a lot. Good luck with it all. Speak soon. Cheers, Si.
Thanks, Tom.